Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from the Awesome Health Podcast by Bioptimizers, and I'm delighted today to share with you JJ Virgin, who is a prominent TV and media personality whose previous features include co-host of TLC's Freaky Eaters, 2 years as the on-camera nutritionist for weight loss challenges on Dr. Phil, and numerous appearances on PBS, Dr. Oz, Rachael Ray, Access Hollywood, and The Today Show. JJ is the author of 4 New York Times bestsellers: The Virgin Diet, The Virgin Diet Cookbook, JJ Virgin's Sugar Impact Diet, JJ Virgin's Sugar Impact Diet Cookbook, and Warrior Mom, 7 Secrets to Bold, Brave Resilience. JJ hosts the popular Ask the Health Expert podcast with over 8 million downloads and growing. She also regularly writes for Rachael Wellness, Mind Body Green, and other major blogs and magazines. Of course, she holds the Mindshare event, probably the premier event for healthpreneurs, shall we say. She has a who's who list of speakers she shared the stage with, including Seth Godin, Lisa Nichols, Gary Vaynerchuk, Mark Hyman, Dan Buttner, and Mary Morrissey. Not to mention is good friends with the legendary Brendan Burchard, and she has taken time out of her busy schedule to share some deep insights into her journey to superstardom, as well as the challenges she met along the way, as well as the mindset it takes to be victorious in the face of adversity. JJ, welcome to the show. You've been such a great influencer for the health industry, and you have an amazing backstory. You're New York Times bestseller. You've done everything that you can possibly imagine, hope to, and dream to. You're a Hall of Famer. You're a New York Times bestseller. And of course, you probably have the most well-known and eclectic event of the year, which in the health industry, the Mindshare group, which is an extraordinary group of people that everybody wants to get into. Can you share with our listeners where that dream started and how did it get to this point? Did you ever imagine this way? Was there a point where it took off? What can you give us a little bit, maybe some of the things that people might know? Because everybody looks at you today and they look up to you, and you've got, like you said, you're at the top of the heap in the fitness field. And that's a tough position to be in a lot of ways, especially in today's cancel culture world, where everybody's looking to try and chop you down or take you apart or go after, and you have to curate every statement. What was that dream that started, and what fueled it, and what fuels you today, I guess, is what I'd like to know.
Well, there's a big question. I always imagined I'd be here, and it was the bumpiest road to get here ever. And if I had an ounce of sense anywhere along the way, I would have done what my mother told me to do, was just like, go get a job. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So, there was never any big sign out there saying, oh, she's going to be successful. Everything was kind of gearing towards the opposite. Actually, this is the craziest thing. I always wanted to be a theater actress. And in high school, I taught dance, I taught calisthenics, and I went to American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. I paid my own way because my parents thought this was silly. And that's what I wanted to do. So I went off to UCLA on a full ride theater scholarship. And I got there, and within a couple months of being there, I went, this is the silliest thing ever. Versus when you're at the conservatory where they have all these working actors and actresses who are amazing teaching you. When you go to UCLA, it's kind of the people who didn't make it are now professors,
Right.
And
isn't that in every field?
It's like, what the heck is this? So now all of a sudden I went from these amazing teachers to the craziest, weirdest classes, and everyone talking about how I was going to be a waitress at this restaurant called Ships in Westwood. And this restaurant had toasters on the table. It was like the worst. I'm going, I did not go to UCLA to become a waitress at ships. So I promptly went, I should really graduate with something that I can use. So I dropped out of the theater department, which, by the way, is like impossible to get into. They accept 60 people a year into this thing, and I drop out. And I decided to become an English major because my professor insulted me, told me that I wrote like a sixth grader, like all this horrible stuff. And I said, okay, that's what I'll do.
Wow.
And by the way, that's not the way to do things. Like, I don't believe in life we should go out and strengthen our weaknesses. I think that you should find what you're best at and amplify the heck out of it, instead of me going, you know what, I'm a crappy writer, so I guess I'll get decent at it. So I became an English major, and I graduated from UCLA and immediately went to grad school in exercise science, because kind of my fourth year at UCLA, I'd still be there, by the way. If they hadn't said, you have too many units, you must leave, I'd still be at UCLA as a student. But I found exercise physiology kind of my fourth year in, and nutrition, but I had too many units. I couldn't switch courses at that point. So I graduated, went off to grad school in biomechanics, which is kind of funny because I hadn't taken any of the prereqs for that. And I sort of told them after the fact, oh, by the way.
Love it. Love it.
Then off to grad school, then off to doctoral school in exercise phys, where I started studying nutrition. And what happened along the way, like, if you look at this stuff, it's like, you realize life really is research and development. And everything that I did along the way all came together for what I'm doing now, but it wouldn't have made any sense. Like, if you started looking, you go, what is she doing? Like, so I go to UCLA, I'm a tap dancer, and I do theater. Okay. Then I start catering, because I'd catered in high school. I literally catered for the '84 Olympics. And I watched Nadia Comaneci eat an entire pate that was for like 100 people. Watched her eat that whole thing. But it was super, super fun thing. So I catered my way through that. So here I was in food, in performance, in writing, right? And teaching. I started teaching aerobics in a nearby studio. Then they need someone to go to someone's house to do a private aerobics class for this gal. I go do this. Now, all of a sudden, I'm a personal trainer, me, Body by Jake, and Mark Sisson. There wasn't a name for this back then. By the time I graduate from UCLA, I have a full business. I am hardly even attending class. When I am, I'm like in my workout clothes.
Did you have the unitards and the crazy colors and all that sort of stuff?
I did not rock the unitard, because it's a very hard thing to go to the bathroom in. But I did. Do you remember back then they had the leg warmers?
Oh, yeah.
Thong. I mean, I would walk around UCLA. I'm like horrified in like thong leotards, and, with tights, thankfully, and leg warmers, and always something tied around my waist, and then a headband, oh my God.
We had that in the bodybuilding world. We had the form-fitting leotards with all the crazy cars, or the baggy pants. Like, I remember the baggy pants, the crazy wear and all that sort of stuff.
I dated the guy who created those baggy pants way back when, Atomics. And I used to work out at Gold's Gym in Venice. So yeah, that was a very expressive, fun time, wasn't it?
It certainly was.
So I had a full business. By the time I graduated from UCLA, I was like making way more than what everyone was going off to get a job to do. So I'm like, I'm not doing that. My mom kept going, are you getting a job? And I'm like, I don't need a job. She goes, what about health insurance? I go, don't worry. I'll be fine, Mom. So anyway, I was really frustrated. And it's interesting. I think everybody in life should have to do multi-level marketing for a year in their life. I think that the most amazing things that you can learn happen there. And I was in Florida going to grad school in sports medicine at University of Miami. And I had a client who was a self-made multimillionaire. She had been literally grown up in a trailer park, single mom, and she became a self-made multimillionaire in Nu Skin.
Wow, that's amazing. There's a lot of amazing stories in that industry.
Incredible. But I was always like, I didn't really know anything about it, but I had a stigma, like, MLM and timeshare, stay away, bad.
Right.
So she's walking down the beach with me one day and she goes, so what are you going to do when you graduate from University of Miami? I go, oh, I'm going to go get my PhD. She goes, first of all, she goes, why are you in grad school? I go, I want to be more successful and help more people. She goes, all right. You don't really have to go to grad school to do that. And I'm like thinking, yeah, what do you know, Miss Multimillionaire from the trailer park, right? I mean, it's so ridiculous now to think about it. Mm-hmm. And then she goes, what are you gonna do when you graduate? And I go, oh, I'm gonna go to USC and I'm gonna get my PhD in exercise science, nutrition, and aging. And she's like, why? And I go, I want to be more successful. She said, at some point you're going to realize that school doesn't equal success. And when you're ready, I'll teach you. And I didn't really pay any attention to her. I was like, yeah, okay. At age 30, she sent me this video from Nu Skin, and it talked about people trading time for money. And what had happened was Nu Skin had just started their nutritional division, which was called Interior Design Nutrition at the time. And she sent me this, and it was like the biggest light bulb went off in my head, Wade. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do to really make an impact in the world. Because as a trainer, I was talking to one person at a time, and I started doing some speeches because I could talk to more people, but still I was like throwing one starfish back in the ocean. So I literally threw all my stuff into storage, went back to Florida, dropped out of my PhD program, went all in and became a diamond in this new nutritional division of Nu Skin, which one of the fun things that happened during that time was FloJo was a spokesperson.
Oh, yeah, right.
I got to take FloJo to the gym in Fort Lauderdale. And I remember I took FloJo to the gym and they wanted her to sign a health release, do you work out regularly? And I'm like looking, going, it is FloJo, people. Like,
it's amazing, right?
Are you kidding? I was going, I ran on the treadmill next to FloJo. It was quite something. But anyway, that it really was this combination of realizing that if you really want to make an impact in the world, you've got to figure out how to have leverage, how to duplicate yourself, how to scale. And that all the things that I'd done, everything from all the exercise studying, the nutrition, the cooking, the personal training, the speaking, the theater, and the writing, all kind of came together. And it didn't come together overnight. And for a long time, it was like, why did I do all these silly, bizarre stuff? I started a healthy catering business multiple times. I owned a gym. But when I moved to Palm Springs, California, I decided that the way I was going to build this business quickly was to do local TV. And so I started doing local TV. And that was really good for me because you don't want to do national TV if you've not done local TV, because you discover that you can do really weird things on camera. And it's better to discover that in a local market than discover it like when you're on Dr. Phil or Dr. Oz and go, what is that weird thing that I do with my mouth? Or what is that weird, like Tourette's-like stutter thing that I do? So I did a lot of local TV, a lot of medical minutes. I started editing my own stuff. I started designing my own segments on TV. And so when I started to, when Dr. Phil showed up, I was ready. And it was interesting. I did Dr. Phil's weight loss challenges for 2 years. I had my own primetime pilot, You Are What You Eat. Then I had a reality show called Freaky Eaters. But despite all of that, I really was struggling. I wasn't really making much in the way of money. I was a single mom, and it was like, hand to mouth. And it wasn't until I did the Virgin Diet book, that was when everything blew up and came together. And I think it's because I was in a very crowded space of weight loss, but I picked a very specific niche that really wasn't known much at the time, food intolerance, and a very unique approach to it that was simple and easy to understand. And I just stayed there. I stayed in that lane instead of trying to be everything to everybody. It was like, okay, tough weight loss cases, thinking they're eating healthy foods, not realizing those could be hurting them. If you drop these 7 foods for just 7 days, you could lose up to 7 pounds. That's it. Simple, easy message.
Beautifully said. And that's a great journey. And I think it's so wonderful that you've dove into all these different areas to kind of land in the area that worked for you. you drove that lane, but at a certain point, you kind of went beyond just that. Like you kind of took another leap as your, I would say, fame and success and impact started to rise concordantly. It seemed like all these things contributed to something else that made you more than someone that's just did a book or did a TV show or did these type of things. Do you remember the point particularly where that, like that kind of hockey stick moment where everything just kind of goes, and then maybe some of the challenges? Because I think a lot of people really underestimate what it takes to achieve the things that you have in your life, and also the challenges that come with it. Like, and that your people are still an ordinary person. They still have to put their shoes on. They still have to work out. They still have to follow this, but they have so many competing pressures. Do you remember what that was like, or what that moment was? And then what were some of the challenges at that stage?
Oh my God. Well, there were challenges all along the way. When I think early on, here I am going through building a business, and I had little kids. I had one of my sons was really struggling with some emotional things. We later found out, like just recently, were Lyme and Bartonella. So here I am, a single mom. My ex was very angry at me at the time. So 7 years of that going on, and just, trying to do everything you can with nothing really hitting. I had my first book come out, 6 Weeks to Sleeveless and Sexy. It was like a bomb, total fail. And then when I sold the Virgin Diet I have an amazing agent, Celeste Fine-Falk, and she really saw that book and said, this is what you need to do, and helped me with that tagline, everything else. And all of a sudden, Wade, it was like the stars were lining up. I got this big advance for the book that I put into the marketing. I hired my good friend, Brendan Burchard, to help me line up the whole book launch. Dr. Daniel Amen helped me get it together for a PBS special. I mean, I had everything lined up. It was all perfect. And then a month before that book is coming out, where I have now invested everything into that book. One of the things that I will do is I go all in. If you want to take the island, you got to burn the boats. I had burnt all the boats for this book. I was all in. It had to go, or, I was going to have nothing, and I'm the support for my kids. And a month before this is coming out, my son Grant, who was 16 at the time, my older son, gets hit by a car while crossing the street and literally left for dead in the street. I mean, left for dead. And when we get to the hospital, the doctor there tells me, my ex-husband, and my son Bryce, who was 15, that my son had suffered a very serious multiple injuries. One was diffuse axonal injuries to his head. He was in a major coma, still had brain activity, but the highest coma score you could have. He had a torn aorta that he said was going to rupture sometime in the next 24 hours if it wasn't repaired, and 13 fractures. I mean, both his femurs were broken in half. His tibia was sticking through his skin. He was covered in road rash. And he said, you just have to let him go.
Wow.
And
oh my God, that's like the worst thing that could possibly happen.
You're sitting here, like I'm sitting here, I'm going, you just have to let him go. I literally walked outside. And I thought to myself, like, what do you do? And because I wanted to do what was best for my son. And I had no idea what that was. I mean, what if I were to overrule the doctors and my son was a vegetable for the rest of his life? Like, had no quality of life. Like, what do you do? And so I walked outside, and one of the things that mentor had told me was, she always said, listen, truly listen. Well, probably the hardest thing for me to do, and probably a lot of us. And I just stood outside that night and I said, Grant, what do you want? Like, what do you want me to do? Is this what you want? Do you want to go? And I heard this big, like, mom, fight for me. So I walked back in. I told the doctor that we were overruling him. My son Bryce was like, when he heard the doctor go through the statistics of, like, he's never surviving the airlift to the other hospital, he's never surviving the surgery. And Bryce said, maybe there's a 0.25% chance he'd make it. And the doctor said, that sounds about right. And he goes, we'll take those odds. And I said, we're overruling you. Like, that's it. So when the Virgin Diet came out, I was sitting bedside at Harbor UCLA next to my son in a coma on a ventilator, with a tube coming out of his brain that was managing the pressure. And I literally launched my New York Times bestselling book from that hospital bed. That is why, like, when people give me the reasons they can't do something, I'm going to say the excuses. I'm like, what if the reason why you can't do it, your why not, in reality is your biggest why? Because I stood in that hospital when my son survived the airlift and survived the surgery and now is sitting in that hospital bed in a coma. And I promised him that I was going to get him to 110% if he would fight. Turns out Grant means warrior. So I was like, Grant, you fight. I will bring in everything I need to get you to be 110%. But Wade, I knew that in order to get my son to be 110%, I had to be able to show up myself at 110%. I put my self-care at the top of the list. I focused. I said, here's what's going to have to happen here. I cannot get sick. You can't walk into an ICU with a sniffle. I have to make sure this book goes bigger than ever because I'm going to do whatever it takes to get him there. And by the way, like, the things that I did to get my son to 110% aren't covered by insurance. And then I needed to be there for my son, like leading causes of death. Number 3, death by doctor, death in the hospitals. These are teaching hospitals. Mistakes happen. Number 1 in kids is traumatic brain injury. So, like, I'm not going anywhere, right? But I have to make this book go too. So that, I'd say, is probably the biggest challenge that came up along the way, but it was also the biggest motivator I could have possibly had. In fact, I look now and I go, I don't know that this book would have been as successful as it has been if that hadn't have happened, because basically success was not an option at that point, right?
That is such an incredible story. And I love the 2 parts of it. One is that in that moment of decision, you had a moment where you could step out and just really tune in. And I think it's an invitation for people today. It's an interesting time in the world where a lot of people are paralyzed by indecision and fear and writing things off. Well, what can we do? I don't, and there's so much confusion. And I see so many people, and there's an actual physiological response where people actually go into this freeze mode in a traumatic situation. Was there anything that you drew from in the past, or is it part of your nature? Was it divine intervention? What was it that allowed you to pull through something that would have, both of those things are huge events of such
Right.
polar opposites of, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty hard to comprehend the polarity of those 2 events happening to one person simultaneously. What do you think it was that pulled you into that superstar moment, like that made you transcend normal human behavior? Because I think we all get so inspired by people that do it, and many people who reach the highest levels of their potential have these moments.
So I talked early on about having that mentor and walking down the beach and then deciding to, like, quit my PhD program, go all in with her. I mean, I literally drove my car back, went to Florida, and moved into this woman's house. Her name is Kay. And she was going to teach me how to be successful in business. What she really did was teach me to be successful in life. And if you want to be successful in business, in your career, and anything else, it's the biggest personal development journey you'll ever go on. Anywhere along the way, if you're not where you want to be, it's probably not because you don't know the latest strategy or you don't have a specific skill. It's probably because of your mindset. And so when I moved into her house with her, and here I am, Wade, I have now dropped out of a PhD program. I sold my business. I got rid of everything I had in California, had people come to my apartment, take everything. And I have now moved in with her. So, I mean, once again, like, I have now burned all the boats, right?
Right.
And first thing she has me do, she goes, all right, you're going to put rubber bands on your wrist. And every time you have a limiting belief, you're going to snap them. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me, you crazy lady? Like, I just did all of this stuff. I have moved here and you want me to put rubber bands on my wrist and snap them when I have a limiting belief. And I'm going to be successful because of this.
This is kind of like a Karate Kid movie where he's waxing the fence or something.
Totally.
Right?
It is my Mr. Miyagi. And so I'm going through this and I go, I'm here, so I will do this. And she taught me over the course of 6 months, before she taught me anything in business, she taught me to tightly manage my environment. That, what you listen to, who you spend time with, what you read is going to absolutely reflect on who you are, how you believe, what you think, etc. And she taught me to, back then I had Walkman. I had a Walkman. I got all of the different books on tape. So I was listening to Think and Grow Rich, The Greatest Salesman, all those types of things. And I mean, just over and over and over. I had Brian Tracy. I remember I met him in person. I go, God, your voice is in my head forever, because I've listened to so many things from Nightingale Conant, from you. And so I just focused. I changed my friends. I changed what I read. I changed what I listened to. I changed what I watched. And I tightly managed my environment to stay in a place of waking up in gratitude, writing down at least 5 things I was grateful for in the morning, of celebrating little wins at the end of the day, of thinking about who I appreciate throughout the day, these things that changed everything. So when you look at it, that night Grant got hit and Bryce talked to the doctor who had told us, Grant will never survive the airlift. And even if he did, he wouldn't survive the surgery. And even if he survived all that, he'd be so brain damaged, it wouldn't be worth it. To which Bryce looks at him and goes, so maybe a 0.25% chance he'd make it. And the doctor says, that's about right. See, the doctor saw 99.75% chance this kid would never make it. We just knew we needed the littlest chance he could. And that's all we focused on, right? And I had been trained that way. And fortunately, because I had been trained that way, that's what my kids knew growing up. It was completely a glass half full scenario. And the critical thing here is my mom, I'm adopted, my adopted mom, that whole family are glass half empty people. There's no question. My mom will tell you what is wrong. If you call her up, she goes, oh, it's raining and I'm like, I can't golf. And I'm go, gosh, I'm so sorry. Then you call her up and she goes, it's too sunny. There's a drought. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's good here?
Right.
So it's not that I wasn't raised in a house where there was negativity and lack. And everyone's just doing the best they can. She was raised in the Great Depression, but it can be changed at any point if you focus on it. And that shift that Kay Smith taught me when I thought I was going to go learn how to do business, what Kay taught me during that time is the reason that my son's alive. It's the reason that I'm successful, and my success path was a success path of 30 years of getting knocked down and getting back up again. No one handed me anything, along the way. But that's what I learned how to do, was just look for the good, stay positive, stay focused. The only limitations are the limitations in your mind. And man, when you're sitting looking at a 0.25% chance your son's going to make it, you really need to understand that the only limitations are the limitations in your mind. I knew, Wade, that if we could keep him alive, I could figure out how to get him to 110%, right? Because I had enough people out there that I could reach out to, and I did, to figure this whole thing out. And the big part of that was, there's a great saying, there are no victims, only volunteers. Grant's never thought of himself as a victim. And we all recognize that this is the best thing that ever happened to all of us. And the shift in someone when they realized that, they got hit by a car, a hit and run, the woman drove off, and they got through that you can pretty much get through anything, right? What if we reframe everything that's going on right now and go, all right, we're going through some challenges. If you look at history, there's always winter, but then you've got spring coming next. This has happened throughout history. What do we need to do right now to show up as our best selves? This is the biggest wake-up call that we've ever had in our lifetimes, that say, hey, prevention freaking matters. Like everyone's talking about a vaccine. I'm like, vitamin D, people, what are we missing here? Support your immune system. Look at the statistics as to the majority of the people who are in trouble here. This is your opportunity to do everything you possibly can for you, your family, the people who you love, everyone out in the world, to teach as much as you can about immune health, and then also the power of gratitude, positive thinking, etc. So what you focus on expands. You could look at the news right now and think that the entire world's on fire, the economy's going to hell, everyone is dying. Or you could focus on what's possible, what's amazing right now. I mean, the stories of what's happening right now, when you look at the positive sides of it, are incredible. So it's just what you're focusing on.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at masszymes.com.
So true. And one of the things, I face this a lot with some of my friends and some who are particularly successful business people and things like that. And they're like, wait, like the odds of this thing that you're doing doesn't make sense. It's you're taking an extraordinary amount of risk. And I'm like, well, I can see that as a general observation, but what are the factors that make that 2.5% successful? Let's not focus on the 97.5% of reasons that don't work. I always like, let's focus on those, because one of the things I love to watch is athletics. And it doesn't matter what the athletics is. You see these athletes who transcend normal human performance. And I always have witnessed that when you see greatness or excellence or the maximization of human potential, whether it's at the Olympics, whether it's someone going the extra mile at the soup kitchen, helping people out that need help, or pulling over on the side of the road when someone's got a car broken down, those moments when they go above and beyond, it becomes art. And art seems to be the point where the mind and the heart kind of move into this other dimension, and it's the magic zone. It's just truly, that's the recipe for miracles. And I've been always fascinated with that. In your journey right now, and I want to focus on your messaging right now. You're a big leader in the industry, and I think fitness people, as you just touched on, people who have been investing in their health and their fitness and taking control of themselves and not being a victim of the statistical probabilities and all this sort of stuff, putting themselves first. What is your message for them right now when so many people are just bunkering down and waiting for some unfit person in some other side of the world to give them an untested drug with no legal recourse if it doesn't work. I mean, like, that seems pretty insane to me, that I'm going to rely on that person other than my own endeavors. What's your message to people?
I think we're at a point, like, for me, when this whole thing started to happen, it was interesting. This year was had been set up to be a crazy year for me, Wade. Like, in January, I was going Florida, California, and Hawaii, then immediately going back to Florida, over to Israel, over to Germany, back to Florida, over to over to LA, over to San Diego, over to Hawaii, back over to LA. And it was just this bizarre thing. So I normally never watch the news, right? And I started, as things started to pop up in January, I'm like, what is going on here? And I thought, I'm traveling a whole lot. And normally I do all of this different assessment to make sure that I'm optimizing all my nutrient levels. So it's back to when I was in the hospital with Grant. And the big realization when I was in the hospital with Grant was, oh boy, I can't get sick. I have to make life or death decisions here. Grant didn't almost die one time. It was time after time after time of things that went on. I had to have my wits about me. I was doing interviews and I thought, I cannot get sick. What should I do? Number one, I'm going to make sure that I'm getting quality sleep every single night. And it's important to say quality. I mean, if you're going to look at the things that really make a difference in your immune system, sleep is huge. And what's going to interrupt your sleep? Stress. So if you're in a fear state with adrenaline, your sleep is trashed. You're going to be in deep trouble, and stress is going to lower your immune system. So I right away went into overdrive of what can I do to help with stress and sleep. So I made sure I also got in my exercise, and I focused on high intensity interval training because that helps your sympathetic nervous system handle stress better. So I was putting in, I love tapping. Shout out to Nick Ortner, Tapping Solutions. So I was doing tapping. I was sleeping well. I was getting my exercise in, which, you look and go, okay, I was getting to the hospital at 6 a.m. in the morning. I'd leave there usually around 8 o'clock at night. So I would just go and run the hospital stairs to do HIIT training. Then I made sure that I was eating correctly, not getting sugar that can lower your immune system, not eating any of the foods that are more high food intolerance foods.
Or what they serve at the hospital.
I had nothing at the hospital. You know what's so crazy? I'll tell you two funny stories about that. Number one, I go down to the hospital, maybe the second day I'm there, and I walk in and it says farm to table food. And I'm thinking, oh, well, thank God. Farm to table food, they had a little platter of apples.
Wow.
That was the only option there that didn't totally suck. So everyone was bringing me stuff. They kept bringing me all sorts of healthy food, which I was sharing with the nurses because I wanted them healthy too. Whole Foods was delivering stuff. So, I made it a point to make sure I was eating healthy. When Grant spit out his feeding tube and started to talk, one of the first words he said made me so proud. He said, disgusting, and pointed at the hospital food. I did not serve him hospital food. I had a NutriBullet blender in there. I was giving him special amino acids because he was losing muscle. I was doing high dose fish oil behind the doctor's backs because they wouldn't let me. And it's like the single biggest thing for TBI that you want to do to put out the fire in the brain. I was doing amazing. I brought him wild fish. We were feeding him so well in that hospital, but no hospital food. And I had to lug it in every single day. There wasn't a fridge I could use at Harbor UCLA. So I brought in all the stuff. I gave him extra supplements. I was loading up on supplements, especially supplements to help with stress, because I knew that as much as I could employ my mindset, still just what I was going through was like crazy. So I did a lot of stress support as well. And when the pandemic started to hit, I looked at this, and I was traveling at the time, so I'd prepared for all of this. So I went, you know what? This is just like I'm back in the hospital where I couldn't walk in if I was sick. And I had done everything to optimize my immune system. I always prioritized vitamin D. So vitamin D and vitamin C and zinc and quercetin, load of really good healthy stuff there, glutathione, et cetera, good gut microbiome, probiotics, et cetera. So I'd done all of that stuff. What's interesting is somewhere on our trip, people started to get sick, and I never even had a sniffle. I showed up with the antibodies later, but I look at this and I think, man, the first thing we should all be doing is optimizing our immune system. I don't know why this wasn't step one. Like, here's all of this, like, and hey, I'm not going to get into a mask debate or anything else. Like, if they say that we have to wear a mask, wear a mask. But why aren't we also looking at the internal mask in our body even if all it was giving people vitamin D3 with K1 and 2, even if that's all we did was optimize vitamin D, maybe give them a little extra C and some zinc and quercetin, this would have shifted dramatically. Dramatically.
100%. And I think that's a good recommendation for people in the holidays. Give your family members, vitamin D, vitamin C, some K, all these type of things as a holiday present.
Stockings, Christmas stocking stuffer. It's but it's very frustrating. You look at what started to come out early on, Wade, and I'm like, all right, what would be the common factors? We started to look at it. That there was issues with insulin resistance. And then there was also instances with people of color. And I thought, what's the common factor there? Vitamin D deficiency. Vitamin D deficiency. Like, I said this to my husband in February. I go, this is a vitamin D deficiency issue. And now all of a sudden I go, but it showed then, but vitamin D is cheap.
Very cheap.
There's no patent. So poo, Anyway, it's at the very least takeaway. Get your vitamin D levels tested, 25 hydroxy vitamin D, optimize your vitamin D levels, 50 to 80 NGs per ml. Like, do this for your family. Like, this should be standard. Like, all these tests we're doing, why don't we just do a finger prick vitamin D test?
It'd be so much more efficient.
Anyway.
So now you've pivoted, of course, all the events, we were really excited. We were going over to the Mindshare event this year. And of course that changed and all this sort of stuff. How have you, as someone who runs events and goes to events, like, how have you made this shift during this time?
So more than anything else, my favorite thing to do is to build communities. Mindshare happened because I was going to a lot of different events, business and marketing events, and I'd find one or two health people at each of these events. And I remember being at an event and they're like, oh, you should have partners to, so you can promote and support each other. I'm like, but there's no other people at the events. And that's where Mindshare started where I was at a Brendan Burchard event and I had lunch.
Love Brendan, by the way. He's such a positive influence. And
he's fantastic. He's got great info right now too. If someone's needing help being positive, go to Brendan.
Yes. That's an understatement.
Yeah. He's like, Jim, every time I talk to him, he's like, hello. I'm like, Brendan. But I started doing lunches at Brendan's event, and the lunches started out with a couple people in a room, and pretty soon there was a line down the hallway. And then we decided to have a little event after one of his events. And then I just started having my own events he came and spoke at. And so really that event only happened because we needed to get together. We needed a place for people who were in the health industry who, also wanted to talk about how to get their message out to the world. And for some reason, there's like this split in the health industry of people who are like, you shouldn't talk about business and marketing. I'm like, how do you get people to take action if you don't know this stuff? Like you with your best kept information hiding in your clinics, not doing anyone any good, right? So that's what we're really focusing on, is how to help you get your message out there so that people at any level, whether they want to work with you one-on-one or they want to read your book or they want to listen to your podcasts, they can start to make that shift. There really isn't an absence of information at this point. So it started with a couple people getting together in a room and grew into this like crazy thing, mainly because I love throwing parties. I love events. And so the Mindshare Summit turned into, it's sort of like someone said, it's like the best wedding they ever went to. And it started with, a costume party. We have a big gala, black tie, where we do awards. So this year, we were holding out hope. Like we were literally didn't call the ball till July because we kept looking at it going, and the hotel said, oh, you can have it. But turns out the hotel said, oh, we could have it. They were going to socially distance everyone the entire time. So it would have been even worse to be there and see everyone like behind plexiglass wearing masks. I go, this is not going to work.
Wearing hazmat suits.
Right? Could you imagine? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'm just waiting for that. I just traveled recently, and I'd say a good majority of the people on the plane were wearing those plastic face shields and masks. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is this what's we're going to shift into, where everyone's just afraid of everybody else and afraid of human touch? Like, you look at one of the most healing things that we have in life, and it's a hug, right? So when I looked at what we could do this year, I am so concerned about the lack of connection, human connection. I mean, it is a basic human need, the need to connect. And I thought, gosh, social isolation. I mean, they've correlated to be the equivalent of smoking a half pack of cigarettes a day. Like, this is frightening. So my background really for the last 20 years has been TV, doing a lot of reality TV, doing pledge drives. And then I thought, really, this event, I'm going to go with this hypothesis that I can create an event online that's even better than an event in person, because for a lot of people who are introverted, shy, they may not go and connect up with people they want to connect up with because it's kind of intimidating to walk up to a group. But when you're online, you can create niche networking, breakouts, all sorts of different events to allow people to meet a lot of different people. And you can have a ton of fun, but you got to make sure they don't click away. So, it's just like TV. If TV is boring, people leave. So I redid this whole event. I brought in my PBS producer to help, and we created a 3.5-day TV show. Literally, we had a TV host, my girlfriend, Dr. Kellyanne. We had a DJ. This next one we're doing in March, we're now taking it whole next level from that. Like, I'm adding in a whole bunch of stuff. But literally, I did a lot of the stuff that I've done on live streams or done in some of the things we actually did in reality. I just pulled into this so that we had a really fun experience that people just loved. In fact, we had more attendees. We had a higher net promoter score. I mean, sure, we missed not being able to dance together and do our costume party, but we still had a dance party. So I don't think this is a replacement for having in-person events. When we can have in-person events again, and we're planning ours for next September, we're definitely going for it. But I do think that the online events are here to stay, that there's so much we can do, but you cannot do them as if you took your in-person event and put it online. That does not work. You have to do it as if you are creating the baddest ass interactive TV show ever, and take that approach.
Beautifully said. And it's great to be able to deal with what life gives you and create something new out of it. And I think those are the people I've categorized two types of people, I should say, since this whole thing has hit us. And that is those who've kind of like just shut down and just, wow, we're going to wait it out and it's over. And then there's this other group of people who are just growing and expanding exponentially. Mm-hmm. I know our company has been that way, and largely in part because of, Matt, my business partner, Matt Gallant, and myself. We're just like, okay, well, this is what it is. Next, keep going, keep moving. Well, and there's less competition now. There's less people that are making those moves.
What's the opportunity? Like, you look at all these things. And again, when you look at business has cycles. Business has spring, summer, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter. It does. And we knew winter was coming. Mm-hmm. We were already planning for it over at Mindshare. We knew it was coming. We didn't know this would come, but we knew we were heading into it because it's predictable, right? And winter has to come. And then you have spring. So you look at it, and if you look at the most successful companies, when winter comes, they go in there and they get the soil ready. They're getting everything ready. And so I just look at this and I go, all right, what are the opportunities here? What are the opportunities, and where can I be of service to? Where are places where people are hurting that I can help,
Well, that kind of leads to, I think, your latest book, which is called The Warrior Mom: 7 Secrets to Bold, Brave Resilience. Shows caregivers everywhere how to be strong, positive leaders for their families while exploring the inspirational lessons JJ learned as she fought for your son's life, which is a remarkable story. Who's that book for, and what is the essence, and why do people need to get this book right now, especially at this time of, and how important it is to activate that warrior spirit?
This book was written for now. It's very interesting. When I wrote this book, so I didn't want to write this book.
Why not?
Because here, when you write a diet book and people do not like your diet book, which inevitably, if you write a diet book, you're going to get lovers and haters. Always.
Oh, big time.
Oh my God. And are they mean? They're like,
I'm a
person. I have feelings. Wow. But they do that, and they're like, oh, they just don't like my diet. They think, I had people attack me because they go, gluten's an essential food. I'm like, what? Really?
Oh yeah.
So, when you write a diet book and they attack you, you're like, all right, you didn't like my diet book. When you write a book that is really, your story and they don't like it, that's personal. So, and I also knew that in writing the story, I was going to be pulling back the kimono. Now, I did not pull the kimono all the way back because I wanted to, some of the things that I haven't shared yet, I now can share, but I didn't know that my son would be so thrilled with me sharing it at the time. But it was interesting when I wrote that book, my agent really wanted me to write it because she went through it with me. Obviously, she was with me during the Virgin Diet. And when she was pregnant with twins and the doctors wanted her to basically, advised her to abort the twins because of a problem that she had in utero, that she managed to find, one hospital who would do a surgery so her sons would survive. But she basically was just going through my mindset stuff. So she goes, you have to write the book. Writing the book was really challenging because I didn't know who I was writing it for. Just like you just said, I'm like, who's this for? And what I found after I wrote the book was, and also people saw me, I was pigeonholed as a diet writer, even though at 30, I lived with Kay Smith, who basically everything in this book, I learned from her. She's the one who like I owe everything to. And everything I do, like if you're in Mindshare or if you're going through any of my programs or books, everything I do, I start with the why. I work on mindset, because I can tell you how to eat healthy, but if you don't think you're worth it, it's not going to do a thing, right? If you do not see yourself as that healthy person who's worth investing in themselves, then nothing I say is going to make a difference. Mm-hmm. But going into New York and they're like, you're not a mindset person. I'm like, yes, I am. I just have been hiding it. So that was part of it, is going into a totally new genre. But
I find that funny. Someone that's had as much success as you and overcome so many challenges, that someone would brand you as not a mindset person. I mean, how do you, that just,
isn't it ridiculous?
It's so ridiculous, right? Like, how could you not be?
Because everyone has their niche that they're in, but also, let's face it, we all do this. You look at someone who's successful and you go, oh, it must have been easy for them, right? They're so-and-so.
The natural assumption.
Yeah, the natural assumption is, oh, it must have been easy for them. They were handed all these things. No one sees all of what it took, all of the rejection, all of the failures, all of the, like near bankruptcy situations that it took to get to this point. Like I remember someone early on said, I'm maybe like 10 years ago, they go, I'd love to study with you because I really want to have a career like you. And I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you about, what it's like to clean the bathrooms at the gym and the urinal, especially. Are you willing to do that? with a toothbrush, right? But I mean, it's like, just most people aren't.
Blindfolded. No.
Yes. Standing on your head.
Let's make it as hard as possible.
Yes. With your toes. Anyway, it really came down to, after I wrote the book, people who started coming out in droves were caretakers. Now, here's the thing. We're all caretakers. At some point in our life, we are going to be a caretaker. And quite often, depending on your age, if you're somewhere, say, 50 to 70 right now, you're probably a double caretaker, if not more. But this book now is so relevant with so many people being caretakers out there, and probably caretakers for both their kids and their parents, that it really gives you this mindset that's so contrarian to what we would think, because the typical mindset is, oh my gosh, my kids are sick, I just have to focus on taking care of them. The mindset that will save their lives and yours is, oh my gosh, my kids are sick, I have to make sure that I am at the top of my game, I'm prioritizing my self-care first, that is selfless, not selfish, so that I can make sure that my kids are healthy.
Oh, that's so beautifully said. And such a needed message to the world today.
Yes.
Let people know that just because you have these extraordinary responsibilities at a given time, just because you have these challenges in front of you, I always say that your obstacles are an invitation from the universe to activate your super self. It's like,
I love that. That's such a great quote. That's so good. And what if just because is the reason you have to step up in this way?
And isn't history fraught with, say, ordinary people that live? That's the whole Joseph Campbell, Gene Houston story, right? Is that ordinary people and life was ordinary and things, and all of a sudden, something tragic happened. And that event was a catalyst from quote unquote ordinary people to realize that they are truly extraordinary.
Do you want to hear something hilarious?
Yes, I do. I always want to hear that.
Especially since you love Brendan. So I was at Experts Academy, and, I was in Brendan's inner circle. Brendan, by the way, flew to the hospital and helped me with my book launch. His mother was at my wedding, a super close friend. I love him. And so Brendan, we were at Experts Academy, and he was talking about your hero's journey and your story. And he has his whole car accident story where he stands, okay. So I'm listening to that and I go, I am sitting there, and this is again, the month before the Virgin Diet's coming out. And I'm literally sitting there and he's talking about it. And I'm thinking, I just got no story. Like, I don't have a story. And I'm walking through that airport that day. And I remember thinking, gosh, everything in life is perfect. But I don't have a story. I don't have a story. And I still had his Live, Love, Matter bracelet.
Right. Yeah. The yellow one or the white.
Right, and so I have this on. I'm walking the thing. The next day, I still have the bracelet on. And I, come home and Grant's been hit by the car. And I remember I sent him a text that night and I'm like, I think that I've got life's golden ticket happening here, oh my gosh. And I kept the Live, Love, Matter bracelet on. And as soon as I could, I put one on Grant too. I had them send me one because I just felt like it was good luck. But that, don't ever ask for a hero's journey is my number one advice.
Yeah, you're gonna get it.
Yeah, they'll come, it'll show up. And I think most of us have had multiples of them in our life. We just discount them when they happen to us. Everybody else's sounds so much cooler than ours does,
True. So, the highlight reels always doesn't go through the daily grind of it all and the ups and downs emotionally and all that. And so I want to be mindful of your time. Any closing words for our audience and where they might reach you or find out more what the next project is for you? Please let it all hang out so our listeners
Okay.
can connect and find with you, your story, your message, your community, everything that you're doing. You're such a bright and shining light in the industry, and we really appreciate you taking the time today. So have at it. The floor is yours.
Thank you. One of the things Kay Smith said to me early on is she said, don't wish it was easier. She said, make yourself better, but I turned it into make yourself stronger. And that night Grant walked out and got hit by the car, like the last thing I said to him is, because he was like, I can't do what you want me to do, Mom. And I go, Grant, you are stronger than you think. So crazy to think about now. And I kept telling him that in the hospital, Grant, you're stronger than you think. And I think that, we're never better than when we're challenged. And the reality is you are so much stronger than you could ever know. You are so much stronger than you think. So my next big project, we're just, I haven't even talked about this, Wade.
Oh, yay.
I know.
I'm so excited. It feels like Christmas.
I've been really like, what should I do? Like, I've been really kind of spinning around on what should I do next? And my agent is a really close friend, my literary agent. And she goes, you're not going to like the answer. And she told me the same answer a year ago, but I didn't hear it. And I go, you know what? The biggest thing I can tell you, if you want to be successful, be coachable and find the people that are the best at what they do. She is the best at what she does. So I'm like, all right, whatever you say, I'm going to do. She goes, you need to do Virgin Diet 2.0. And so what I've decided to do is do Virgin Diet 2.0 because so much has come out about food intolerance, food sensitivities since I wrote that book. But I'm going to do it in an even cooler way. So what I want to do is I'm going to take the best of the best people in the book industry, in the marketing industry, et cetera. I've been outlining this since we talked about it a couple of days ago. And I'm going to document the entire process of what it really takes to take a book from your idea to out into the hands of hundreds of thousands of people.
Wow, that's super cool.
Isn't that fun? Because I was like, what will make this really, really, really cool? That will make it really, really cool. So I'm just, one of the things that I say in order to make something happen, when I was going to do the Virgin Diet, I just started telling everyone about it. It was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I have my first meeting with our PBS producer and Sam Horn, who's like the ninja of marketing, and my agent Celeste, and then away we go.
Beautifully said. I'm so excited. I'm looking for it. Where can people reach you, connect with you, and find out more about you, all your work, and everything that you are doing in the world?
So my consumer, all my health stuff's at jjvirgin.com. All of our health biz stuff is mindsharecollaborative.com. We have lots of cool stuff going on there. I've really been focusing this year on that community because that community has so much needs to serve the world. And then we have podcasts through both of those. And you were just on our podcast over there. Now we have to have you on the Ask the Health Expert podcast too.
Well, thank you very much. You were so open, and thank you for sharing those deep aspects of your life. I love where the message goes, and I love tracking and seeing where your career goes and the influence that you've had in the industry. Thank you so much for joining us on the Awesome Health Podcast. And for all those who are listening, make sure you check out JJ's version. And of course, everything that she is doing, this Virgin 2.0 diet, should be something special because everything JJ does is special. Thank you all. Have yourself a great day.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Turn cultured foods into superfoods. Raw fermented foods like sauerkraut and low sugar live yogurt can be good for you, but rarely have enough of the right probiotic strains for therapeutic benefit. So here's a way that you can turn them into superfoods. What I do is I get some raw sauerkraut or a healthy yogurt. Ideally, it's grass-fed or coconut-based, and you can empty 3 caps of P3OM into a container and mix it up thoroughly. Leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours before putting it back into the fridge. And what's going to happen is these probiotic levels will be multiplied. In fact, it doubles every 20 minutes. And then what you're going to get is you're going to have a food with strong proteolytic activity. To learn more about P3OM and why its patented strains make it the strongest probiotic available, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.